In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and mailing to the officially designated newspapers a list of meeting dates annually, indicating that this meeting would take place on Wednesday, June 16th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. via the Zoom platform. Due to the COVID-19 virus and mandatory quarantines imposed under executive orders by Governor Philip D. Murphy, Milburn Town Hall had been closed to the public for purpose of board meetings. The notice was given containing information necessary for members of the public to attend the meeting through the Zoom platform, both by audio and/or video means. The public will have the same opportunity to participate at the appropriate time virtually, just as if they were attending an in-person meeting. This notice was posted on the Millburn Township website, Milburn Town Hall Bulletin Board, and Milburn Town Hall front door, and was also forwarded to the Item and Star Ledger, which publications are the official newspapers for the Township of Milburn. Roll call.
Daniel Baer.
Here.
Gaston Halbert.
Here.
Jorge Mastropietro.
Here.
Mark Matzel.
Here.
Maggie Miggins.
Here.
Sanjeev Vinayak.
Here.
David Morrow.
Here.
Srini Vijay.
Here.
Chairwoman Betzel.
Here. Thank you. So tonight we don't have any meeting minutes on our agenda. And for those who weren't here before the meeting, I'm just going to state it for the record. Eileen had sent an email on Monday noting that there were March 3rd minutes, but they weren't actually attached to the email. So she will circulate those and we will vote on them at our vote to approve them at our next meeting. Similarly, she sent out an email today with the meeting minutes from February 24th, but assuming not everybody has had the chance to review those for their own comments or corrections, I'd also prefer that we hold those until our next meeting, just to give everybody sufficient chance to review. So we will continue to not have any meeting minutes to approve tonight. The next order of business on our agenda, which I just had and then it popped down, is proposed. The only item we have tonight, we don't have any applications, but we have the proposed historic landmarks referral that we received at the planning board. I think before we get into that, Ed, I'm guessing you have a few, I don't know if you want to share some opening remarks, or, and you had provided an email, you sent me an email that had some nice context, the way I think you went and looked a little bit historically at where the concepts and maybe some of the different terms that we were seeing have been reflected in our master plan of landmark, designation, site. So I would love to let you speak to that if you're comfortable doing so.
I will do so. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. There's just a couple of things. I was trying to figure out how this all fits together, and I had called Eileen actually to tell her that in my tenure with the board, which has been about 8 years or so, I hadn't really recalled doing this kind of thing, and she hadn't recalled it. So I went back to the ordinance to get a sense of what we are supposed to do. And also the statute that creates, that the township utilized to create the Historic Preservation Commission. And interestingly, if you look at our 1991-1997 master plan update, that's where we included, and again, we generically being the planning board, an historic preservation plan as an element of the master plan. So I looked at that one to see what it said. It talked about the objectives of the historic preservation, which are very similar to what's in the ordinance and what you saw in the reports that we saw. It set forth criteria for historic designations. It set forth presently designated historic districts, of which there are 2 in Milburn, one being Short Hills Park, and the other one being the Wyoming section. They're depicted on a map. But then there's a plate 16, and it's titled Historic Buildings in Millburn Township. And there's a designation predating 1900 and not located in the presently designated historic districts. So I took a look at that, and it turns out that two of the three sites that we're talking about tonight are actually designated in that plate, which is part of our master plan. The Hessian House at 155 Milburn Avenue, and the Nicholas Parcel House, which is 363 White Oak Ridge Road. The one that is not designated is the Parcel Cemetery, but interestingly, that is also noted in that 1991 update in the section subsection dealing with other possible future district and possible future sites. And one of the sites that they refer to is sites throughout the community, including the Parcel Cemetery and other cemeteries and houses of worship. So this, at least as it relates to the Parcel Cemetery, this has been a long time in coming, but I couldn't figure out what we were doing here tonight if these other two are already in the master plan. So when I went back to the ordinance to try to fit everything together, I noted the following, and I'll just read it from the email because it's quicker than my trying to paraphrase my own paragraph here. I wrote, the historic preservation ordinance does not reference historic buildings, which are the two buildings that I just mentioned. They're under the category historic building, not historic landmark. But the historic preservation ordinance does not mention or reference historic buildings, just historic districts and historic landmarks. Under section 804 of the DRZ, the planning board has 60 days to issue a report, presumably whether the designated building should be categorized as an historic landmark. The township committee takes the report of the planning board, along with the report of the HPC, and decides whether to approve, reject, or modify by ordinance the designation recommendations made by the planning board. So there's two things there that are interesting. One is that the designation is made by ordinance. The master plan we adopt, we don't adopt ordinances, we adopt resolutions. So this is a slightly different procedure to get to the level of designating an historic landmark. And the second thing that's interesting about that is they refer to the designation recommendations made by the planning board. And the reality is we are, I guess, making some recommendations here, but this is not generated by the planning board. We didn't go around and do this, and I'm not being disparaging in any way. This is something that was referred to us under the ordinance. So it was just interesting language that the ordinance creating the HPC does. Anyway, once our report is sent back, and presumably we're talking about whether these should be designated as historic landmarks, and the township committee can approve, reject, or modify those determinations. Once it's done, the designation list and the map is to be incorporated into the municipal master plan and the zoning ordinance. I also pointed out that under the current ordinance, up to date, at least as far as it's on the reported on the website, there are no designated landmarks set forth in the ordinance. If you look under that section, which is the section 805, it says historic landmarks, none. And then it does list the two historic districts that I outlined, the Short Hills Park in Wyoming. So I concluded that our job is to report back to the township committee as to whether or not these three sites should be, or any of those three sites should be designated as a historic landmark. The last thing I want to add, and I did not include this in the email that I sent to the chair, I then thought about, okay, well, what's the consequence of this? This is, just, they put a placard on there and they say we're a historic landmark. What are the consequences? And there are consequences, and the consequences are pretty important. And again, many of you, I see you're nodding your head. So, you either did this already or you've gone through it or you understand based upon your experience what happens. But just to briefly set forth what happens, effectively, whatever you want to do with an historic landmark, other than as far as I read it now, and I'll stand to be corrected, interior work that you may do. Anything else, you need a certificate of appropriateness, which is issued by the HPC. And there's a whole series of criteria. You have to make an application. There has to be a hearing. There's a whole series of things you have to do. If you want to, essentially, and again, there may be some caveats here because I didn't outline everything precisely, but essentially, if you want to do something with the building or the structure that's been designated as an historic landmark, not necessarily in a historic district, there's a number of hoops you have to jump through. And, perhaps that's pejorative, and I don't mean it pejoratively, but there's a series of things they have to do. So my point is that the designation of a property as an historic landmark is not just some, simple thing. And as I said, you put a placard on and you say, hey, this is a historic landmark, or stick something in the ground. It has consequences to the owner. And in order for the report to have been done, there had to be a hearing before the Historic Preservation Commission that had to give notice to the owners of that property, and the owners had a right to come in and object and so forth. I don't know what happened with any of that, and I'll be perfectly candid with you. I did not read in detail the 3 reports that were attached as support for the nomination of these 3 things as landmarks. So anyway, that's the end of my, I thought short, but unfortunately a little bit longer than the explanation. And there may be others on the board who can supplement what I've said or clarify. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a couple of things I want to add, but Mark, I see you have your hand raised, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I was just curious, Ed, of the designations that come out of, through the commission, I guess. What percentage of these sites get submitted to SHPO for New Jersey Registry, of Historic Places?
I don't know. And also, I think Eileen had put out a little request from that Historic Preservation Commission to sort of verify what I've said tonight. And at least as of late this afternoon, she hadn't gotten anything in response. I assume she hadn't gotten anything since then.
Thanks.
I guess, Maggie, I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't know the answer, but I can ask. I believe you are the liaison also to the HPC. Is that, you are muted, but it's okay.
Go ahead. What were you going to say, Beth?
I believe you are the liaison to HPC. So
Sure.
I don't know if anything in addition to what Ed stated and Mark's question of, what is the goal? What happens? Will this go to the State Historic Preservation SHPO office, I think?
I think it does go to the SHPO office, but if you want, I can get Allison. Why don't we have Allison come on the call? She can come on this meeting right now, right?
I think we don't, I want to confirm with Ed, because I don't know if we open it up to public, like members of the public to discuss, although she is the chair of the commission. So.
And didn't Ed say that Eileen tried to reach out to her?
Well, Eileen tried to reach out to somebody. I don't know who. It was the Historic Preservation Commission.
I sent the email chain of mails that you exchanged with me and Beth. I forwarded it to Allison and Bart.
Okay. So, I mean, I could try and get her on the phone if you want. I do believe it does have to go to SHPO. And then as far as who owns the properties, I do believe the township owns the parcel house and the township owns the cemetery, and the Partnership for Drug-Free America owns the Hessian house. And so we were all noticed from the township properties, and I do believe the Hessian house was as well.
And you don't know if they supported or opposed or nothing?
Well, the township supports it. The township supports it. Dan Bear has his hands up. And I do believe the Partnership for Drug-Free America does support it, but I can find that out if you wish.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks. Thank you, Beth. That's my concern. The 2 properties, the Parcel properties, are both township properties. One's the new historic home of our historic whatever. But the Hessian House for years, even when I was in office, we tried to purchase the Hessian House from the family that lived there. We weren't able to do it. So my concern is that the fact that it's owned by a private business, and I know that they were noticed, and I would just like to understand if they showed up at the hearing, if they were able to testify as part of that hearing, if there was any feedback from them, because what council says, the imposition that occurs with this is significant if you want to do something to the building.
Mhm.
You're held under a whole new level of review. So I would really be interested to understand if there was any fact that they even knew, because it's a business, not a residence. And so therefore I'm a little worried that they maybe didn't get the notice or whatever happened. I'm sure the notice was delivered, but who knows?
The
Yeah.
notice was delivered. And so I would suggest if there's a question that we do get Allison on the phone, because she would be able to speak to this as the chairperson, but everybody was noticed properly the way you're supposed to do it. Everything was done and there was no objection from the,
It was the one that mailed them out.
Nicole, you were the one that mailed those out, right?
That's not my concern. My concern is the fact that it's not a residence of business. So who knows how they handled the notice? I don't know if the notice got to the right person, because typically, because they're not there, they have administrative staff there. Okay. So I'm wondering how they handle that notice, if it ever got to the appropriate person. I don't know. I'm always concerned if it's a private business owner or private residence, there's always that concern that you're imposing a certain level of scrutiny now on them. And I had that happen before when I was office, when we were looking at that, and a lot of the homeowners came back threatening lawsuits. So I just would like to understand what kind of conversation was had.
I appreciate that. So that would be fine. I'm okay. Maggie, if you do want to reach out, and the link is on the
Okay,
Millburn
so
Township.
I'm going to send Allison the link and then she can come on and talk. So hold on, let me try and do this.
No
Hold
problem.
on.
And does anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, I wanted to share something. Okay, great. I'm just going to put on the screen a clip from this, if I can do this correctly. You'd think it would be enough. Hopefully you're seeing what looks like text. This is a clip from what Ed had passed along to me, which was the 91 to 97 master plan re-exam or master plan. And this includes the section on developing this historic preservation plan and the objectives, the goals and objectives of this plan. And this, I'll just toggle through real quick. This is part of the larger, it's our whole municipality, and then it talks through each of the zones that we have. So this is part of the larger thing. Talks about proposed zoning changes, and then this gets into the historic preservation plan, just so you have some context. But some of the things that specifically lists as the goals and objectives were to list historic sites and districts. We have the list, to study and document recommended sites and districts for possible designation in the zoning code and for inclusion in the official map, and to encourage Millburn Township HPC to have prepared applications of recommended historic sites and district for listing in the New Jersey State Register of Historic Places to increase public awareness, et cetera, to have the Millburn Township Historic Preservation Commission exercise its statutory authority to assure compliance with development regulations and zoning. So that's effectively what they're doing. And what Ed mentioned, the fact that we've had 0 landmark properties designated in almost 25 years, and yet we talk about the pride we have in having a historic community, I think was noteworthy. That said, I think my opinion is that the HPC did their homework, right? Did do the research, provided these, not only the memorandum with the referral of nomination, which they did, but then these backup, they're multi-page. I mean, I think one of them was like 70 pages, 60, 70 pages, providing the context on these historic buildings. The Hessian House, George Washington was there, I was reading about. They had, 2, and those of you who know the history know the history. But I thought it was presented, compellingly. That said, I do recognize what Dan mentioned, which is there are consequences to adopting such a plan, and to allow owners of the property to know and make sure that their voice is heard in the process is important. So Allison, welcome. Thank you for jumping on and joining us this evening.
Great. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I'm in the car, but I
Nope,
have pulled off, so thank you.
We can hear you, and thank you for jumping on as quickly as you could. So what you probably just caught a little bit of the tail end of what I was sharing, which is just that there is certainly consistency in what you and the Historic Preservation have shared with us and our master plan, but there were some specific questions in terms of ownership. And so we just heard that Millburn Township is the owner of the Parcel House and Cemetery site, but there is a private owner of the Hessian House site. So we just wanted to understand, we know Nicole confirmed that a letter was sent to them, but has there been any response either in attending the meeting or otherwise, if you know of that?
No, there has been no pushback. Matter of fact, this particular organization takes pride in the fact that they are in this historic house, display, the historic nature of this house openly. So they have been for this from the beginning, but this is just a preliminary walkthrough. They have multiple opportunities, goes in front of the township committee. There's various other stages here. But at this point, because they were noticed, if they had any complaints or issues, then it would go then under that notice. So far, everything has gone extremely well. I think, as you said, reading all the material on all three of the Parcel House, the cemetery, and also the Hessian House, those are probably three of our most, historic properties still standing. So you can see why that was important to us.
Sure. And I just want to clarify, I appreciate you said no pushback, but have you heard any do we know that they actually received the letter? Has there been any contact from the owners to Millburn Township or vice versa? From the HBC to them, just to say, we know we sent the letter, but we just, want to kind of make sure you understand what's happening here.
Nicole would have that information if there was anything sent back. I know Barton has spoken to the owner on previous occasions. They have been for this. Matter of fact, most people didn't even know that it wasn't already designated. And yes, they do know the limitations of, building. And again, I think where people are misunderstanding is, there are still options to expand. It's just that to safeguard so the property cannot be torn down. There are some restrictions on what they can and can't do with the property. But again, it was more important to save those properties from being torn down or developed. So that was really what we were going for on those.
Okay, I appreciate the response, and thank you again so much for your quick responsiveness and being able to speak to that.
Well, thank you. And any other questions, please feel free.
Did anybody else have further questions for Ms. Canfield?
Can I just ask, I think you referred twice to SHPO. Can somebody give me, is that an acronym for something?
State Historic Preservation Office, I believe, is the O.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Allison.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks. Drive safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great. So one of the things that comes to mind, maybe in our recommendation back to the township committee, might be to request, I suppose we would request that they receive a letter of support from the owner, because it sounds like she's indicating that they've been supportive in the past, and Barton has spoken to her. So maybe we should recommend that they get that for the record. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. I don't think she answered the question. Okay, I think she avoided the question. Did a good job avoiding the question. I don't think that the owner was present at the hearing. I don't know. I still don't hear that there was any interchange and discussion at the hearing. Still not convinced that.
That's why asking for a letter of support would mean that they.
So let me finish. Thank you. I would not hesitate to support. So I wanted to make a statement here, Beth. I don't think you understood what I was saying. This is not about the support of this historic facility. I am totally supportive of the Hessian House all the way back to when I was in office, and that's why I made that statement. What I'm concerned about is the fact that there maybe was not any interchange of discussion. And so while I would support this tonight, I would also want to make sure that the minutes of this meeting and our recommendation back to the Township Committee stated that there needs to be some level of discussion and coordination with the owners of the Hessian House. Make sure that happens, because I still have some level of concern. Thank you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. I think that's what I was getting at, but I think you said it better. So thank you. Yes, not necessarily
sure better, but thank you.
It's fine. Yeah, I do think there is sort of a need to recognize and make sure that the owner is in full recognition of what is being proposed. Mr. Matzel.
Yeah, Madam Chair, sorry, I had a question for the historic preservation.
Oh, Allison, I apologize. I did not see your hand up. I apologize.
It's okay. And I was curious because I heard you say before that there has not been an application or an award through either SHPO or the National Registry in 22 years. Did I hear you say that?
So that's what Ed indicates. So our plan was from the 1991-97 master plan update, what I was just sharing on the screen, which said we encourage the township to, designate properties. And then what Ed mentioned was that our most recent master plan states historic landmarks, nothing. I think that's what Ed said. So meaning, I don't know if they have applied and been denied any, or if we just have not put any forth. Okay. So I don't know the history of that, but it seems that nothing has been designated. So I'm guessing we have not tried to designate anything specifically. But I don't know the full answer on that. Mr. Buzak.
Yes, just to follow up on Mr. Baer's comment. Nicole, do you have a copy of the notice itself that was sent to the property owner? And the reason I'm asking is that the ordinance addresses some of the things that Mr. Baer had mentioned. The notification requirements for attendance at the public hearing are that the owner of record of the property that has been proposed be notified that the property is being considered for such designation and the reasons therefore. 2, the notice is to advise the owners of record of the significance and consequences of such a designation and of the rights of the owner of record to contest such designation under the provisions of this article. 3, to notify the owner of record of the date, time, and location of the hearing concerning the proposed designation of the property. And then 4, serve any further notices as may be required under the municipal land use law. So I was curious as to whether that contents requirement was followed, or whether it was just a notice saying, your property is being considered for historic landmark designation and the hearing is at such and such a time.
I could log out and try to log into the firehouse and get a copy of it. I could probably pull it in and then come back in with it. If you give me a minute. Because
sure.
I don't remember. I didn't type it. It was just given to me and I was told to send it out certified to the within so many feet. I think it was 500. I'm making that up. Certain amount of feet. I got a list from the engineering department and I just stuffed the envelopes and sent it out. But I could go get it. I'll be back.
Sure, thank you.
I'm not sure that in the end that'll answer the question in the sense of, Mr. Bear's concern about sort of an interchange and exchange between the property owner and someone and what that was said. I know Allison said that Barton, I think, had some contact with them, but we don't know the contents and what was said. And
Right.
that kind of
If I can interrupt, just Maggie, if you happen to be able to turn yourself back on, we are supposed to make sure we're seeing each other. Sorry to make you do that. Oh, okay, you're on the go. Okay. Okay, great. So any other thoughts from the other board members on some of the discussion we've had so far, concerns, support? Jorge, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just have a question. I see the picture here of this house, and there is already a plaque there. Is that already designated as historic building? So I don't understand.
I know there is a plaque there. I don't know that it indicates designation or just saying at this site in this year, this happened. I think that might have been what Allison was mentioning, that they have pride in being a historic location, but I don't know that the plaque states any specific designation. Hopefully it wouldn't, if it doesn't have, that would kind of be false advertising, but I don't know what the content is, but I know I have noticed those plaques around that say at this site, in this year, this is what happened here.
Okay. Thanks.
Ed, can I ask a question? Would the owner of the property get the same notice as everyone within whatever the distance was, or would they get a different type of notice?
Again, I don't profess to be
I'm just curious.
But it looks like the notice requirements are only to the properties that are going to be designated.
Oh, okay.
The last part says, serve any further notices as may be required under the provisions of the MLUL. And I don't recall there being any specific requirements under the MLUL for that designation. But while Nicole is checking, I'm going to check the statute and see that.
And Eileen, you would not have received a copy of that letter, I guess, because the notice just went out to the owners. Okay.
No, I did not.
Yeah, that's okay. Hopefully Nicole can pull it down.
I haven't found any specific notice requirements in the MLUL related to the designation of an historic landmark. The notice provisions, for the most part, relate to applications for development, which a designation as a historic landmark is not among the categories for a development application.
Okay. So assuming if we're in the position where the letter was, pretty much a form letter saying, here's a notice that something is, an application has been made or request has been made and you're invited to come to the township committee meeting and speak at this date, and maybe somebody did read it or didn't read it or didn't get to the potential property owner of whom we're saying may have interest, we still have a decision to make tonight. So let's wait and hopefully we'll see if Nicole confirms that suspicion is true, or maybe they did, come back and consult what it is that Ed has found and, provided the more in-depth letter that may or may not have happened. But in the case that they didn't, I do like the proposal that Dan suggested, which is to say, depending, I don't want to speak for everybody. I also do support this recommendation. I think this is consistent with what we as the township want to be doing and should be doing, and in this appropriate site to do it. But I do also agree that we would strongly recommend they, make contact with owner and have a, just make the owner aware. I don't know that, I guess they need to have their support, or if they have concerns, at least maybe have a dialogue to address them. Does anybody have any similar or different thoughts? Okay, Mark.
Yeah, I know of several instances where an owner and municipality have actually declined a designation. And in those instances, they were, two of them were for the national, on the national registry. And I know when I was the state's deputy state historic preservation officer for a few years. And, we had basically people that fought designations, private owners, for the obvious reason that, I think that Dan alluded to, you really can't alter it, or there are certain criteria for which you can alter the homes, and they didn't want to, be strapped with that. But anyway, that is what it is.
Okay, thanks. David?
I mean, to kind of echo what Dan had said, there are a number of requirements. I mean, Ed had also mentioned it. There's a number of requirements to becoming a landmark property in a historic district. The owner should acknowledge they understand all of that. It even gets down to like the color paint that's used on the exterior. So they need to understand that and agree to it, whether or not they, we believe they're supportive of it.
Right. And I want to echo, I believe, if I read this list correctly, the Hessian House site is not located in the Wyoming Historic District, but is a property. Did anybody else interpret that the same? The nomination.
That's correct. It's not in the Wyoming Historic District.
Right. But it is a site of significance.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was interesting. I'm still not clear as to what that list in the master plan that you put up on the screen, Beth, in the 91, 97 update, what that actually means. I mean, I understand the words and the meaning of the words, but the significance of them, it's like, these are historic buildings that are not in the historic district. And it's okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I guess they're saying to consider for doing this type of review and making the recommendations, which is where we're at, right? Maybe that's why these were, flagged.
Yeah.
Hey, Ed.
Yes.
Found the landmark resolutions.
Yeah, we have them.
Let me keep looking.
You didn't find the letter?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I'm trying to connect to this. It's slow moving. I click, I wait, I click.
Okay.
Allie.
Thank you. And maybe we can make our decision regardless of what the letter does say, which I think, I think we've heard it echoed a couple of times that we, strongly recommend that the TC or somebody from Millburn Township, makes we have some sort of documented contact that they have acknowledged receipt of the details. So our charge tonight, for once, is not to declare inconsistency with the master plan or not inconsistent with the master plan, but rather to, I believe, to vote to approve the writing of a report or a memorandum, I suppose it would be, in support of the historic preservation's proposal to the township committee. So we would either echo our support or state other considerations, which I think we've identified, just the one of making sure to contact and confirm with the owners of the Hessian House. Are there any other considerations, and or is anybody not feeling in support for any reasons of any of these three? You know, we're kind of grouping them together, but Gaston?
I'm sorry, and I'm always a little bit late. I overthink things. But if we were allowed to call the historic preservation chair, could we also call the executive director of the Partnership for a Drug-Free New Jersey? If we have a cell phone?
If anybody happens to have that person's contact. Yeah, I'm guessing their business is probably closed after 8 p.m. But
Yeah, I'm just looking at the website, but it is there. So
a cell phone number?
that's what it says, yes. So it gives the actual landline, and then below the executive director, Angelo Valentina, and cell phone number.
Ed, I suppose if we contacted one side, there's no reason not to.
I see no problem in contacting them. Under these circumstances, I think that, you know, we're trying to get some assistance in terms of the decisions we have to make, and I think we have the ability to do that.
Okay, so we're in these unprecedented times. Gaston will go ahead and make a call. Gaston, I would, if you can hear me real quick, Gaston. No, are you gone? So Gaston, I was saying, I think I don't know if you need to effectively spill the beans, but I think if you just mentioned that you are on the town planning board and there is a meeting that, you know, involves their site, and you just wanted to, you know, connect with them and offer them the opportunity if you do connect. If not, I guess, if you wanted to, if they don't answer and you want to leave a message, you'll have to decide if you are comfortable giving your own contact info or refer them to visit town hall. And then would it be Nicole that they should try to contact?
Well, it would either be Nicole or Eileen. Both of them are giving me these glares, not me. No, I'm only kidding.
I just want to make sure, Gaston, you know what to kind of say when you're there.
Certainly, yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay.
I may have found something. I'm just trying to figure out how to get it here so I can share it because it's there. So stay with me. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Madam Chair, while we're waiting, may I bring up a different subject? This is like, you know, we don't want dead air on a Zoom call, so somebody's got to say something.
Sure. Yes, I have two other things that I think I would like to cover tonight, but go ahead. You may bring up one of them.
This may be one of them, and that is, I think all of you know, and if you don't, you will know now, that the board's approval of the Wells Fargo Beehive application has been challenged by the objector who had participated in the hearings. Milburn Courtyard Associates, I think is the name. And they've challenged the approval that the board gave. The challenge focused on a claim that this was not a variance-free application, that there were several variances related to parking, related to loading zones, and you'll remember some of the comments that were made and questions that were raised by the objector's counsel during the course of the hearings. The fact that there was no notice for any of those variances, and that the board's action was arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable because they should have presented proofs related to those deviations from the ordinance. Our office has prepared a draft answer, which is the next step. But I believe that the actual litigation will be handled by another attorney because the joint insurance fund, who is defending the ordinance that served as the underlying basis for the approval that the board gave, JIF is picking up that defense, and they've agreed to pick up the defense of this challenge as well. So it will likely be handled by the same attorney who's handling the ordinance challenge. I've spoken to her, and she'll take the answer that I draft and tweak it or whatever, and then file it. And I will likely, if it goes in that direction, I will likely just file a notice of appearance in the litigation. And the purpose of that is so that I will be notified through e-courts, which is the system that the court system, the judiciary has, of all activities in the case, and have a right to participate if I want to participate. So I just want to let the board know all of that. Many times in these cases, that is the planning board aspect of this case, when there's a challenge made to an approval, the laboring or is really the applicant's counsel, and the board's counsel typically supplements, if necessary, anything that the board's counsel, or not the board's, the applicant's counsel does. When I spoke to the attorney assigned from JIF, she agreed with that strategy and anticipated that is what was going to happen. So anyway, I just wanted to bring everybody up to speed. The answer is due at the end of the month, and we'll have it done certainly by then. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And that was not one of the two items I had to speak about. Can you just repeat? I didn't hear you at the end of the timing. You said something about the end of the month, but I didn't catch it.
Our answer is due at the end of the month. It's a 35-day period.
Okay. And then do you know what happens beyond that? Then does it go to a judgment?
The court will hold a case management conference. That is, the objector is required to order and obtain transcripts of the proceedings. They're required to certify in their complaint that they ordered those. They did certify it. So nothing can really happen in the case formally judicially, until the transcripts are done, because everything is based upon the record created. There's no testimony in that in this kind of case. So typically the court will hold a case management conference and establish a schedule for briefs to be filed, which is typically the brief of the objector, followed usually by 30 days or 45 days by the brief of the in this case, the applicant and the planning board, and then usually a 15-day, 2-week or so reply by the objector, and then the court sets it down for a hearing, which is an oral argument. Again, no testimony, no witnesses, no cross-examination, none of that. It's all based upon the record that was created before the planning board.
Okay.
I can't tell you the timing of it. I mean, the case management conference, depending on which vicinage you're in, Essex County is a little bit more overwhelmed than some of the other counties in terms of scheduling things. So I wouldn't think that we're going to see any kind of decision here before the end of the year.
Okay. Thank you for that update. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
We haven't gotten Gaston back, so I don't know, but Nicole, were you able to find the letter?
I can attempt to share what I did find. I didn't get everything I tried to bring over, but let's see what I have. Hold on.
Okay.
I think this is it. Could this have been what I mailed? Does this look? I believe this is inviting.
Notice of the hearing. I guess this was maybe public, the form of the published notice. And it could well be what was said.
Because this was the only thing I have that I didn't type. So I'm thinking this was it. There were 3 different, it was this, the cemetery.
And the house.
House. But tomorrow morning I can go through everything quickly and I could email it to all of you if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah, you can send it through Eileen, but and that's fine. Thank you for finding this. That's helpful. I mean, it's I think what we suspected, which is pretty standard language, that there is an application and a consideration, and here's how you can participate, which is appreciated. Thank you. Yep. And then let's see if Gaston had any luck. Maybe having a very long conversation, or it's been a while. Nope. A thumbs up. So he's trying to get somebody to join us, perhaps. We're in the 21st century, guys. In the meantime, I will bring up one of my items, which is that I apologize. Ed had sent us all the Canoe Brook Country Club approval resolution and asked us to consider that tonight. So before we break for the evening, I would like us to do that. I should have done that earlier. I had it on my computer, but I didn't put it in the agenda and it wasn't there. So that will be the approval resolution for the Canoe Brook Country Club that we received on the 11th. That was one of my items. And oh, Gaston's in quite a conversation now. The second item, which, yes. Ooh. Is it me that's freezing now?
No.
Stand on that one, the Canoe Brook.
Was I freezing? Was I slow? Or okay, it was the, because it's usually me. Who just spoke? Was that Eileen?
Maggie. It was
Maggie, I'm sorry. Okay, Maggie, we didn't hear what you said.
I said I have to recuse on the Canoe Brook.
That's fine. So what we'll do is we'll do that last, and then thank you for sharing that. I apologize. Okay, your Wi-Fi was Roman or something. The other item, we're just going all sorts of out of order, so I apologize. Well, at least Eric isn't taking notes. I have heard from our township business administrator that we are moving towards having meetings in person, given the change in executive orders. So the new town hall requirement, I believe, is that if a person is vaccinated, they are no longer going to be required to mask. And Eileen, if I'm misstating this, please do correct me. And if you are unvaccinated, you are requested to continue wearing a mask indoors.
They just say masks are not required, and for non-vaccinated, masks are encouraged, but it doesn't mandate it.
Got it.
And we're targeting September to be back, and town hall. I don't think we should have a problem.
So I just wanted to make everybody aware. I just heard that today. We have, I believe, one meeting in July and one meeting in August. So maybe we can discuss as they approach if we want to. If we do have hearings, if we do have applications, and we'll be meeting. I don't know. Eileen, do you know if we have a July meeting as of right now?
As of right now, we do. Yes.
Okay. Great. Yeah, we may want to consider if we're comfortable. And it looks like we have a guest. So Eileen, if you're able to bring that guest over to our.
No, they're calling. I can't.
Oh, and you can't. No, but Allison was just able to call, and she said she was just calling.
Yeah, but she was on a.
Oh.
Well, she called on a computer. She was on a computer on the. This is yeah, I don't have the ability. Maybe you do, Nicole. Mine just says rename, remove. You can't bring a phone call over.
I don't.
Oh no.
They're in as a
I
listener.
think you could allow to talk. Let me see. Yeah, let's see if that works. There we go.
Oh, okay.
They
Good
might-
evening. I guessed on, I don't know this just, oh, hello there.
Yes, hi.
Hi, good evening. I don't know your name, but my name is Beth. I'm the chair of the Millburn Township Planning Board, and we know that you've been a little bit potentially caught off guard, so we'll try to give you a little context. Or was Gaston able to speak to you previously?
Just about the fact that there's a meeting going on tonight.
Okay, great. So just briefly before I ask you to introduce yourself, I just wanted to let you know we have there's a multi-step process, and one of the steps in terms of historic designation for the site that is called the Hessian House, which I believe you're affiliated with, and I'll ask you just to state that yourself when I turn it back over to you, is being considered for nomination to the Historic Preservation State Historic Preservation Office for designation as a landmark site. Ed, am I getting historic landmark?
It's historic landmark, and that would also be initially in the township's scheme of regulation. It would be named as a historic landmark, and then there are consequences. So let me pass it back to you, Chair.
Yep, thank you. That Ed is our attorney. I know you're not seeing us all. There are a total of 12 of us here on the Zoom call. And so what we are aiming to discuss tonight is whether we support the designation of multiple sites, one of which is the Hessian House, for designation as a historic landmark. And one thing that came up is typically in these processes, the town sends a letter and makes the owner of each property aware of what's going on to allow them the opportunity to inform themselves of the process, understand consequences of what it might mean to be designated, and voice concerns or support. So earlier on in our meeting tonight, we actually did the same thing. We called and had the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission join us we asked, did anybody from the Hessian House come and speak at any of these meetings? Did you hear from them? And she said, we haven't heard anything, we haven't heard any arguments against it. So that said, we didn't know if there was support or arguments against it. So Gaston had the idea, well, why don't we reach out and see what happens? And so we've now similarly called you in to offer you the opportunity or the chance to hear about this potentially for the first time. So if I could ask you, I'll pause there. If I could ask you to introduce yourself, your name, and your relation to that property, that would be great.
Okay, well, my name is Angelo Valente, Valente. I'm the executive director of the Partnership for a Drug-Free New Jersey,
Okay.
which is board of directors is actually the owner of the property.
Okay, great. Thank you for that context. Okay. So do you recall receiving this letter?
I have not received any communications about this action.
Okay. Well, and although, yes, I mean, but just because it was sent, we had this, just because something gets sent doesn't always mean it's received right on the other end. And that was potentially one of our suspicions. So we also heard from the Historic Preservation Chair, and I don't know if it's with you or with the board at large, that a representative or historic preservation, I guess he's a historic preservationist, Barton Ross, had spoken and generally had support of the Hessian House or the partnership board in the past for maintaining its historic characteristics.
We have not spoken to anyone about any details about the 155 Millburn Avenue property.
Okay, well, that is helpful context. Again, we're not asking you to speak on behalf of anybody that, we're not, I don't know if you, would want to theoretically consult with your board and make sure that they are aware, but it's really helpful to hear from you directly.
What we would ask, just hearing what's going on, is that if this matter can be deferred to a later date, allowing us the opportunity to, receive the proper notification and be able to respond to this particular matter.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I would ask our counsel, who's here with us. So again, we are not, we the planning board are here to make a recommendation whether we support or do not support this, the township committee to go forward and make any changes to zoning, I believe. But Ed, if I could ask you to sort of clarify for the record, the multi-step, where we are in this potential multi-step process, just so that you, Angelo, can understand.
That's fine, Madam Chair. Mr. Zalante, my name is Ed Bruzak. I am, as the chair said, the attorney for the planning board in Milburn. And I just want to very briefly explain to you the process as I understand it. And I stand to be corrected. There's others on the board who have more familiarity with this. But generally speaking, the Historic Preservation Commission, which we are not, we are the planning board, has a process that's set forth in the ordinances of the township to designate properties or nominate properties to be historic landmarks. And under that ordinance, there's a protocol that's set up, and among the things, after meeting the criteria that you need to meet in order to be considered for a nomination for a historic landmark, there's an actual public process and a hearing that the Historic Preservation Commission has, in which they are required to give notice to the property owners whose property is being considered to be designated as an historic landmark. And after they give that notice, it's both individual notice to the property owner, and I believe it's published notice in the newspaper. That notice sets a hearing date at which the property owner can appear, and they can voice their position on it. The notice that you were supposed to get, or the notice that was sent, also includes a summary, or should include a summary, of the consequences of being designated as an historic landmark, so that the property owner understands that it's not just, you get the right to put a plaque up, or the township comes in and puts a plaque up on your door or in your lawn saying, this is an historic landmark with something. But there are consequences. And the basic, sort of generically, and this is not, please understand this is not a full explanation of the consequences. But in general, the consequences are that before you are able to do anything on the exterior of that structure, from painting to repairs to windows to whatever, you need to embark upon a process that's set forth in the ordinance where you have to get something called a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission. And I don't want to go too far afield here because, as I said, I'm the counsel for the planning board and not for the Historic Preservation Commission. But I think in general, the idea is, as you might fathom, that what you're doing or what you propose to do to the exterior of that building does not significantly modify or affect the character, and those attributes, I suppose, that made it qualify to be an historic landmark, which is more than just being an old building. And all of that's supposed to be set forth in the notice that you got, and you then have the right to have come to that hearing and voice your position, objection, support, and so forth. And apparently we are aware from the Historic Preservation Commission that no one did appear at the hearing, and that confirms some of the concerns that members of the planning board had, that maybe everybody didn't get the notice, or they didn't understand the consequences of it, or particularly in an organization, it goes to someone and they're not sure what it means and they don't do anything about it. I'm not casting aspersions, obviously, on any of your staff or you about that. So the board was concerned about it. That's why we're actually doing a somewhat unusual process of reaching out to find that out. And it's proven to be, I think, for the board members, important and an eye-opener. Now, what's supposed to happen tonight? Okay, Beth.
I'm not sure if he's still with us.
Yeah, did we lose him?
I've been accused of putting people asleep.
Oh, looks like he's back. Okay. His phone must have just dropped for a second. Okay. Sorry, I had to interrupt.
No, that's
okay. Mr. Valente, I think you're back hopefully with us now. You're muted, but oh, yeah. Okay, great. So
I'm back. Sorry.
Great. I don't know where you left off, but hopefully I think you were getting the gist of what Mr. Buzak was sharing with you.
Yes, I was. That all of this information should have been outlined in a notification that we should have received.
Right. And then you had the right then to go to that meeting, set forth your position about whether, you're in favor or not in favor of being named a historic landmark. Apparently that hearing was held. The result of that was that the Historic Preservation Committee made a recommendation to the Township Committee, which is the governing body, the elected officials in the township, to designate this property as an historic landmark. And there were two other properties that were included as well, but those other two properties are owned by the township. So, there's less of a concern. It's not owned by a private entity. The process is the Township Committee, elected officials, review this nomination report and adopt a resolution as to whether they think that it ought to be considered as a landmark. And then the ordinance requires the township to refer that Historic Preservation Commission recommendation to the planning board. And that's where we are now. So now the planning board looks at the recommendations, and the planning board is required within 60 days of referral to report back to the Township Committee, the elected officials, to let them know whether the planning board is effectively on board with designating these properties as an historic landmark. The Township Committee then takes that recommendation and ultimately has the final word as to whether the property is going to be designated as an historic landmark. So we're I guess about 2/3 of the way through the process when it's before the planning board. But there's one more step when it goes back to the township committee. And, before you speak, Mr. Zalante, let me just ask one more question of Eileen. Do you recall, I may have it here, when this was referred to us from the township committee? I guess it would be when the resolution was adopted.
May 18th or 19th.
Okay, so May 18th and 19th. So we have until July, let's say 18th or 19th to report back. If we don't report back to the township committee, they can proceed without the recommendation of the planning board. When's our next meeting in July?
July 7th.
July, I'm sorry.
The 7th of July.
Oh, okay, 7th. So that's well within the 60 days. Well, not well, but it's within the 60-day window. So I think from the board's perspective, you certainly have the ability to defer at the request of the property owner to defer consideration before you and carry it to our July meeting. I guess the question is going to be what can Mr. Zalante do, and perhaps, well, I don't know, Mr. Zalante, let me pass it back to you and see what your thoughts are. Assuming the board defers it until the July 7th, which is 3 weeks or so from now. What do you, and I'm not pressing you for this because I know you're being caught completely off guard here, but do you have sort of a plan or something in mind in terms of what you would be able to do within that 3-week period?
Other than become knowledgeable of what the steps are and what the consequences are, and then speak to our board about what their position is on this, and then be able to make that position known to the planning board so that perhaps that's a criteria or a factor, in them determining whether or not to approve or to reject this particular property as part of that process. I think that would be what we would be doing over the next several weeks leading up to your next board meeting.
Okay, that's at least from my perspective. Again, this is Ed Buzak speaking because I know you can't see anyone. As the attorney for the board, I think that's a good game plan, and I'm going to get back to the chair because he controls the meeting.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that. I think that's a very reasonable suggestion that we make sure you receive the letter and have the ability to contact, the appropriate, get the details, which are available on the website. So I think you just need to, be given the appropriate links and, the appropriate access to it. And then you can certainly make yourself and anybody, pretty quickly informed of what's being proposed. But yeah. I appreciate that you didn't know that before tonight. So
I did not.
Understood. So Nicole, could we request that another letter, the same letter, be sent out again directly so that they can be on the lookout, for it? And it comes in certified mail, I believe. Is that accurate?
Whose attention should I send it to? Let's start with that.
Well, yes. One factor is that because of COVID, we are all remote, so we are not physically in the office. So I'm not sure and that we haven't received any. We do have a post office box and a forwarding, and we haven't received any notification that there's been any certified mail left for us.
Is there an email address?
Yes.
That can be, maybe we can get it out to an email address, and this way we have
that you could send it directly to my email address, and then I'll share it with our board and our council.
Okay.
I see that Andy Brewer has joined our attendees, and I know it's on HPC.
Okay, let's finish with sharing the email. So Nicole, are you able to hear it? So go ahead and provide the email address that's preferred.
Sure. ANGELO, Angelo, at drugfreenj, that's DRUGFREENJ.org, O-R-G.
Okay, thank you. And her name is Nicole. Would it come from you, Nicole, or would it come from Millburn Township?
It'll come from N. Dante at Millburn Township.
Okay, great.
Okay. And you'll send it out, I'm assuming, tomorrow?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes. Great. Well, thank you, Angelo. So now, Angelo, you're welcome to hang on and listen. You're also welcome to hang up because we know we've interrupted your evening, but thank you so much for joining us. So Eileen, you mentioned there's a member of the Historical Preservation.
Oh, Andy Brewer, who's with Marizini, Falcon and Healy, and I believe he sits as the attorney.
Oh, the attorney for the HPC.
And I don't know if Allison may have reached out to him. I don't know.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Brewer, if you're able to kind of use the raise hand function, if you'd like to come in and join us and share anything specifically.
I see Alan is.
And it looks like Allison is back too. Okay. Great. So Mr. Brewer or Ms. Canfield, we just to update you, hopefully you can hear us. Since we've last spoken to Allison, we actually were able to get in touch, just like we had reached out to you. We also just gave a call to the contact information for Partnership for Drug-Free New Jersey. Angelo joined us. He's still here with us now. And he indicated that he had not yet received, they have been all remote due to COVID. So he had not received the notification and they were not aware, to no fault of anybody's, but he very much appreciated, being, I think, informed. And the plan going forward is for Nicole to go ahead and directly email him so that he's received the notice and can disseminate to his board. And they would, just want to kind of inform themselves, and hopefully they can access the Millburn Township website, which has the links to everything that's been prepared to date, and can just be caught up to date on the proposal at hand and understand the implications. Mr. Brewer. So we can bring him in, Eileen. Yeah. Hey there, you should be with us. If you can go ahead and unmute. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I am loath, I'm not stepping on toes. I was just asked to join this meeting. I'm not certain in what capacity, but to the extent the board chooses and would like any input on what was done on some of the designations. Again, I'm not stepping on toes.
Thanks so much. So just, I don't know how much of that recap that I just provided you heard, but Angelo, who's joined us by phone, is I believe the CEO or executive director at the at 155 Milburn Avenue, the current tenant of that site. And so he was not yet informed. They hadn't, as I just mentioned, hadn't received a letter due to being currently remote. So was not yet aware, and they did not appear at the township committee meeting because they did not receive the notification. So that was all. And then we followed up and offered to email him directly, as I said, so that they can share it with their board and be made aware.
But I don't have to step on any toes. I'm like everything.
You don't, Ed. I think you're trying to talk, but you're muted.
I'm sorry. Hi, Andy. How are you?
Very good, Ed. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I was able to explain, as best I understand it, the process that the Historic Preservation Commission uses to designate or to nominate properties to be historic landmarks based upon the ordinance. And one of those, of course, is the hearing at which the property owner is able to attend and voice his concerns or objections or support or ask questions, whatever they want to do. And what happened was when we got the direction from the township committee, which is the further step down the process after the Historic Preservation Commission makes its recommendation to the township committee, the question came up about, gee, sometimes do we know these people appear? Do they know what the impact is and so forth? And that led to this whole discussion. We got Allison on the phone, and she explained that the process did take place, that there was a hearing, that no one appeared, and there was some concern that I wonder if they did not appear out of choice. Did they not appear because they weren't aware it was going on? What did the notice say, and so forth? So that's what led to the inquiry, and two of the properties are owned by the township, so there's less of a concern with that. This one is privately owned. So we were able, through the efforts of some of our board members, to reach out and talk to Angelo Zalante, who is the executive director of the organization Drug Free New Jersey, who informed us that he was unaware of any of this. This is the first time he's heard about anything. And again, as the chair said, that's not casting aspersions on anyone. It is what it is. But I think, so he asked that the planning board defer any consideration of a recommendation until our next meeting. Our next meeting is within the 60-day window that we have from the date it was referred to us by the township committee. So that's good. That's July 7th. But one of the things that I think we need to, and we're not obviously going to discuss it here, but I wanted to raise it with you. Maybe we can talk about it. And Mr. Zalante, you may need to contact either Andy or I about this. Is okay. What's the best way to proceed? Does the planning board hear Mr. Zalante and as a representative of the organization, and sort of have this planning board, not this meeting tonight, but on July 7th or 9th, our next meeting, have that sort of substitute for what they would have said at the Historic Preservation Commission meeting? Do we just sort of, write back to the township committee and say, look, there was, explain what happened, and that maybe the Historic Preservation Commission should hold another hearing and sort of restart that process? I really don't know. I haven't really thought it through, but I think the overall idea is that now that we know that they were not aware of it, and again, through no fault of anyone's, and it really doesn't matter, but they ought to be aware of it because there are consequences to that designation. So anyway, I think, Andy, I just wanted to raise that with you. Maybe we can discuss it offline.
Yep.
And figure out what's going to happen. But I think the board seems to be, I don't want to speak for them, but I think they're agreeable to just carrying anything on the Hessian house to our next meeting and dealing with the other two.
I'm generally available tomorrow and Friday to talk, but that would be a great idea.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Ed. I appreciate that recommendation. I like the idea of deferring this specific, the Hessian House 155 Milburn Ave discussion until you've had a chance to talk and decide on an appropriate course of action. So thank you, Mr. Brewer, for joining us, as well as Angelo. Thank you for jumping on. So that I think that gives us the direction we need.
Thank you as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So it sounds like everybody will be in touch tomorrow. Great. So Eileen, thank you. I think you can put them back in attendee mode as needed. And I would then say, so I want to make sure we have the right resolution. There's 151, 152, and 153. And I have them here in front of me. And the 151 and 152 are both the Parcel House recommendations. So those, I feel that I didn't hear any concern or opposition from any members of the planning board, given that the township owns the properties and the township committee has put this forth to us. So would anybody like to, I guess we'd have to make a motion, Ed, if we were going to make a motion to move to a recommendation on a report?
Yes.
We're doing these separately for each one, or are we going to?
Let's do them individually. Yeah. So for 151, let me just read what that is. That's the Parcel Family Cemetery. To designate it as, so resolution 21-151, the Parcel Family Cemetery as a historic landmark. This would be making a nomination to approve it for recommendation for consideration by the Township Committee. Anybody make such a motion?
I'll
I
make a
the
motion.
Okay, so I think we had a Jorge, Gaston, and Maggie. So,
Sure.
Okay, thank you all. We're going to vote individually.
Yes, I think we should take a roll call vote on it.
Daniel Bear,
Couldn't hear you, Dan, but I think your mouth said yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Gaston Halbert,
Yes.
Jorge Mastro Pietro,
Yes.
Mark Matzel,
Yes.
Maggie Miggins,
Yes.
Sanjeev Benayak,
Yes.
David Morrow,
Yes.
Srini Vijay,
Yes.
that's all.
Yes. Okay. Resolution 21-152, the Parcel House. Would anybody like to make a nomination to propose recommending it as a historic landmark?
Okay.
I will second it.
Daniel Bear,
Yes.
Gaston Halbert,
Yes.
Jorge Mastro Pietro,
Yes.
Mark Matzel,
Yes.
Maggie Miggins,
Yes.
Sanjeev Benayak,
Yes.
David Morrow,
Yes.
Srini Vijay,
Yes.
that's all.
Yes. Thank you. And then regarding resolution 21-153, which is 155 Milburn Ave or the Hessian House, Ed, is the appropriate course of action to make a motion to defer the decision until July 7th, until additional conversations can be had?
Yes, I think that's
Okay.
correct.
I will make that motion, sorry.
I'll
second
second
that.
Thank you, Sanjeev, second, thank you.
Sorry, Gaston.
Daniel Bear,
Yes.
Gaston Halbert,
Yes.
Jorge Mastro Pietro,
Yes.
Mark Matzel,
Yes.
Maggie Miggins,
Yes.
Sanjeev Benayak,
Yes.
David Morrow,
Yes.
Srini Vijay,
Yes.
that's all.
Yes, thank you. Great. Before we move on, I believe Ms. Miggins will be recusing because the next and I believe final order of business for tonight is reviewing the Canoe Brook resolution.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the evening, everyone.
Aye.
You as well. Good night, Maggie.
Good night.
Okay. So the Canoe Brook resolution we received on June 11th from Mr. Buzak. That was application 21001 for minor site plan approval. I don't know if anybody had any comments or corrections or edits to said
I did
resolution.
not receive anything, Madam Chair.
You did not receive anything. And Eileen, do you have in front of you those members who voted yes, who can vote tonight?
Yes, I do. Just see. The only one who cannot vote is Srini. Everyone else is eligible.
Okay, great. Anybody like to make a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion.
Anybody want a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jorge.
Daniel Bear,
Yes.
Gaston Halbert,
Yes.
Jorge Mastro Pietro,
Yes.
Mark Matzel,
Yes.
Sanjeev Benayak,
Yes.
David Morrow,
Yes.
that's all.
Yes. Application for Canoe Brook resolution is approved. 21001. Our next meeting is July 7th. And I don't think we have anything further to add tonight. The only item of new business that I was going to bring up, I mentioned before, I'll just reiterate it again. We will be looking to determine our own board's policy on moving back to in-person meetings. It may not be July 7th, perhaps it will be August. If not, it will certainly be by September is the plan. So thank you all. And I encourage you to get vaccinated if you're not already. Motion to adjourn. Mark gets the motion. Second? I will second. 9:01 p.m. Have a good evening, everybody. Stay safe. We'll see you on July 7th.
Good evening.
Night.